Kayla, can you hear me?
On mute. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dr. Burke. Is it Dr. I'm sorry. Let me allow your mic and camera. Dr. Berkey, or is it Dr. Burke?
It is Berkey. Thank you. There we go.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started in about 7-8 minutes or so. Here's how I think things are going to kind of go. We're going to have a roll call, and then they're going to approve the minutes, and then we're going to amend the agenda to allow you to speak first, so that you don't have to sit through, the entire meeting, unless you want to, of course.
I may hang on for a little bit, but yeah, that would be great. Do I have capacity to share screen? Because I do have a short PowerPoint.
Let me see. Let's see.
Are you able to hear me today?
Yes, we can hear you, Captain Faulkner. Your video is a little fuzzy and it's frozen. But Dr. Berkey, let me see if I can allow you to share your screen. Let me see if I spotlight you. I may have disabled that setting. If you want, you can forward me your presentation and I can share it for you. But do you see the share screen option?
It's muted, so I don't have it. Like it's there, but it's not.
Oh, yeah, I think I disabled it for all participants. Okay. I'm so sorry.
No, that's
so
fine.
We don't get like Zoom bombed or webinar bombed. I don't know what it's called.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I will send you my PowerPoint right now.
Awesome. Captain Faulkner, you're frozen now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you are frozen.
Probably better that way, Caitlin, but let me see what I can see if I can. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble lately.
Yeah, it's like ever since you came back from vacation, I don't know. It's like your computer's still in vacation mode.
It is, very much so. All right. I switched over to the house Wi-Fi. Maybe that'll be better.
Got it.
Is that a CU Buffalo? Oh.
Yes, it is. Oh, where'd you go to school, Doctor?
I'm from Nebraska.
So my wife and I both went to the University of Colorado. And it's funny you say Nebraska. So she was a cheerleader. And she literally was just telling her mother, who was in town last week, about how wonderful Nebraska fans actually are. And in the grand scheme of things, you had the better of us for many years that I was there. So you guys win.
That's probably true. You and I are probably fairly close in age. So yeah, I would guess.
Yeah, I was losing.
But the latest on social media is there were some Nebraska podcast guys trash talking your coach, which is not appropriate.
Yeah, and he's a polarizing individual. We'll see if he at least makes the football good again.
So are you from Delaware or are you from the area?
I'll give you a very very long story. Yes and no. So as a youth, I grew up in Japan as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was transferred here to Delaware for about 3 years while we were living overseas. Then we moved back to Japan. So I went to college from Tokyo and ended up in Colorado just randomly. And then, but we always kept a home here. So we had a place to call home since we were overseas so much. So since my wife and I came back once we graduated and stayed and with the intent of leaving, and we never left. They sucked us in. She's a teacher at Linden Hill and Red Clay, and then I became a police officer. So yeah, we never left. But how about you? What brought you from Nebraska out here?
So I did my bachelor's and master's at University of Nebraska, and then decided I wanted to do my PhD. But Nebraska at the time didn't have a degree program that I was interested in, and they tell you not to get all three at one school.
Same place. Mm-hmm.
So I shopped around. I had mentors that recommended University of Delaware. And at that time, and I visited Delaware, UD, and UNC Greensboro in May. And it happened to be a beautiful May, and everything was in bloom. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. Yeah. And so I ended up coming here to UD, graduating, met my husband, who is a Delawarean, and staying.
Very nice. Yeah, it's a great place to live. I mean, it's like I said, she was a transplant kid. She was an Air Force brat, and we traveled between the two of us. We lived in a lot of different places, and we fell in love with here. It's the convenience to everything, and you're close enough but far enough away.
Yeah.
Great place. So, well, it's very nice to meet you. I look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
First of all, Captain Faulkner, I did not know you were from Japan. I had no idea.
It's a weird little fun fact, I guess.
The more you know. I have to add it to our Jeopardy board. Where's Captain Faulkner from?
And his wife's a cheerleader.
I know. Like, how perfect is that?
Yeah.
Were you on the football team?
I was not. No, it was funny. I played in high school, but again, I played overseas, and we played against primarily Air Force or Army bases, military bases. And I'll never forget. I was in the ROTC program at the University of Colorado, and I got a chance to go on the field actually again when Nebraska was in town and when Texas was in town. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen human beings that big in my life. Those two programs very much built them differently. Our team and myself was a very small comparison, so. Yeah, I would have gotten crushed.
Welcome, everyone. You should be able to unmute your mics now and turn on your video. Dr. Berkey, you should be able to share your screen now. Let me know if you see the option.
I do see the option.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Chairwoman Eppenheimer, I'll let you decide how long you want to wait till we get started, but so far we do not have a quorum, so we got to wait a few minutes for sure.
That sounds fine. And it usually takes about, at least 5 minutes for people to get on and get situated and find the right link. So, we can wait a few minutes.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is that Dr. Berkey could speak in the beginning of the meeting. So maybe we amend the agenda to allow her to speak after or before we talk about the Citizens Police Academy. Is that okay with you?
Yep, I think that is perfect. So I'll do that first, ask for the amendment. Well, I'll do roll call, ask for the amendment, and then we can move on.
Got it. So far, I know Miss Pam is going to join us. I think Krista should be here. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Kaylin, I used the link Pam sent me and it didn't work. And then I used the link you sent me and it did. So I don't know, Pam may not have the correct link.
Okay, maybe that's it. People are trying to figure out what's going on with my broken link.
Well, there's 2 links in the calendar invite. And if you go to the first one, it's actually the one that you would use, Kaylin, for the actual organization. You have to scroll down to get to the second one. Because I made that mistake. I didn't even read it. I just clicked on the first one I saw on the calendar invite.
Got it. Okay. That is so weird.
But I didn't try any emails. If you sent a follow-up email, I didn't use that link. I just went to my calendar invite.
So you went to the calendar and that worked for you?
When I did the second link that's listed there, yes.
And that's so weird. I'm only seeing one link. Oh.
It could be, I have Gmail. I don't know if that matters. It could be different depending on people's, setups.
Let's see. Krista just joined us. Hey, Krista. How many do we have? 1,
Hello.
2, 4, 5, 6. Hey, Tanya. All right.
Hello. I was also having issues joining and found the second link thing in my in the calendar invite. It doesn't show a link at all, like in the message reminder, but then whenever you like click into it, it has two links. The first one, it like kept wanting me to log in, but the second one allowed me to just come on it.
That's so strange. I don't see a second link at all. I just see the join meeting now.
Probably because you're the you set it up. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why it's yours. I don't know.
Okay.
It's weird.
Yeah. Did anyone use the link in my email that I sent yesterday? No. Okay, so that must be the broken one. Captain Faulkner, have you heard from Director Bond?
Spoke with him multiple times today, so I'm just getting ready to text him to make sure he's
maybe
joining us, but he was planning on being here.
Quite frankly, I don't see a second link.
I'm about to send it to you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Right.
Sent.
Thank you. All right. So you definitely have quorum now, Chairwoman Eppenheimer.
Okay, fantastic. We'll give it. See, we're missing 2 people.
Yeah, I know Doug just texted me, so he should be joining.
I'm on here. This is Vaughn. Good evening.
Hey, Director Bond. Good evening. Is this what it looks like to you, Tanya? This is weird.
If I get a chance, I can try to screenshot what it looks like for mine and send it to you so you can see.
Yeah, because I did a copy paste of what was in the calendar invite.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. This link is literally like 1,000 characters long. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a Zoom girl, so Microsoft Teams is a little new to me.
Yep. All righty. Well, it is 6:06. We have a quorum and we have the majority. So I am officially going to call this evening's meeting, August 22nd, of the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board officially in session at 6:06 p.m. And then first order of business is roll call for our board members. So going in the order, which I have in front of me, Kim Eppiheimer is here. That is me. Kevin Evans.
Kevin's here.
I saw his name. Yeah.
Kevin, can you hear us? If you're talking, you're on mute.
All right, we can come back to it. And I see a lot of people are not on camera, so I won't be able to see. Okay. Pamela.
Sorry, I'm on. Sorry about that.
There you are. Thanks, Kevin. Pam?
Present. Thank you.
Norwood Coleman? Okay. Krista Davis?
Here.
Dr. Jenna DiLuterio?
She is in the lobby. She fell off, but she's coming back in now.
Okay, good. We'll see if her mic works. I can come back to her if I want to give her a moment. Sean Green?
Here.
Great. Bishop George Gibson. I don't see his name on here. Doug, I think you said you were here. No?
No, Doug may be a little late. I think he's having issues joining.
Okay. Deshaun Nixon.
Good evening. I'm present.
Wonderful. And Dr. Tanya Whittle.
Present.
And then our non-voting members, we have Vaughn Bond.
Present.
And I think we have Brian Faulkner here as well, if I remember seeing his face.
Yes, ma'am, present.
Wonderful. And then we have our beautiful, supportive, amazing staff, Mike Gordon and Kaylin Richards here. Yay! We
And
do
this is
have a
Jenna.
very
This is Jenna Delatario. I'm here. Sorry.
oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I wasn't able to turn on my mic or camera. I didn't have permission.
That's great. Thank you for being here. We will have a presentation from Dr. Is it Burke or Berkey? Forgive me for
Berkey.
Berkey, wonderful. And we want to prioritize that. So I'm asking for an amendment on our agenda to begin with that before we get into any other discussion. Does anyone have any qualms with that? Do we have a motion for the agenda change?
Make the motion unless that was you making it, and then I'll second it.
I saw a thumbs up. Perfect. Then we will go ahead and amend the agenda and we will reflect Dr. Berkey is going to start with her presentation and then we will move on from there with the rest of the agenda. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I was invited here by Pam, and I don't know, Pam, if you want to say a few words to kind of set context, or you just want me to start in?
Sure. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm having a little technical difficulty, so if someone can give me a thumbs up that you can hear me. Excellent.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So I came to know this phenomenal lady, Dr. Deb Berkey, back in 2016. I was an executive assistant to Director Renee Beeman for the Division of State Service Centers. The content that you are going to sort of get an overview on proved to be priceless. The staff, along with Dr. Berkey, exposed us to priceless and valuable information, which was transformable. It transformed about 5,000 employees' perspectives on how they interact with the public and how not to re-traumatize and how to be empathetic and to learn about the effects of things that you experience in your childhood could potentially affect your point of view and how you move forward as an adult. It covers vicarious trauma and the effects of those other traumas that can ultimately lead to illnesses and just basically change your perspective and how you perceive things. I think that this content will prove to be a life-changing experience. So for some, this may be an introduction, and this may be a re-welcome for some. But I would like to introduce to you the amazing Dr. Deb Berkey of Wilmington University. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate that intro. And thanks to all of you for allowing me to come and sit in on your meeting for a short period of time and share a little bit about what I've been doing in terms of the trauma-informed world. As Pam mentioned, there we go. She and I met approximately 8 years, oh my gosh, 8 years ago now. When after I was newly exposed to trauma-informed approaches, trauma-informed care. And I will have to admit, as soon as I was exposed to it, I bought into it hook, line, and sinker because it just made so much sense. In part because I grew up in a family where there was domestic violence and child abuse and neglect. And trauma-informed perspective is actually a strengths-based perspective and says people in situations oftentimes are doing the best that they can in those situations. And even though what they're doing may not be very healthy from a public perspective, they're doing what they're doing to survive. And so it just changed my perspective to think about, in my family in particular, my mother doing what she needed to do to survive, to keep herself alive, to keep us alive. And the fact that she did that is what I'm here today. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Excellent. So I'm going to talk about trauma-informed approaches, but in particular, how they relate to policing. And as you may know, Wilmington University actually has an undergraduate certificate in trauma-informed approaches, a graduate certificate in trauma and resilience, and we have criminal justice programs, undergraduate and graduate. And so what I'm going to share today has been reviewed by 3 former law enforcement officers, one with Newcastle County, one with Delaware State Police, and one with Salisbury City, Salisbury Chief of Police. And so they gave me some really good advice and insights and examples to enhance the content that I'm going to talk about today. So I am very informal, and I thought we'd start with a graphic and a phrase and have you think a little bit about what this actually symbolizes to you. When you hear the phrase, may we all spend the day looking for the goldfish instead of punishing the shark, what comes to mind for you? And I'd love it if people want to come off unmute and mute themselves and share what they think of when they hear this phrase or see the graphic.
It makes me think we need to look beyond the surface.
Mm-hmm.
If you look for the negative, you're bound to see it. And if you look for the positive, you can also find that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Perception is everything.
Mm-hmm. Any other observations? One of the things that strikes me every time is the fin that's above the ocean is what we're allowed to see. What's below the ocean, below the is what's hidden. And sometimes what we see may be aggressive, assertive, over whatever, like the shark and the fin. But in reality, underneath, if you start to dig, peel away the onion, look behind the curtain, you'll see vulnerability and softness and childlikeness, perhaps, in those kinds of things. So thinking about how this relates to policing in particular, and the kinds of public who police interact with on a daily basis. And as all 3 of my friends said, when we interact with the public, 9 times out of 10, we're not seeing them on their best day. We're seeing them on their worst day, whatever that might look like. And when we see them on their worst day, they might be acting like a shark, when in reality, they're a goldfish. But we have to know to look under the covers and keep a different perspective. Is that it is looking through a different set of glasses. It's looking at life through a different lens. And so it's changing our perspective. It's coming at it from a more strengths-based perspective, the assets that people bring to the table. It is looking at how we act. It also changes how we act then towards people. Because if I'm approaching somebody and they're acting tough, but if they're really a teddy bear inside, that might change how I approach them. And that approaches, and it changes what we do, how we say, what we think, what we believe, and all those sorts of things. So first and foremost, it's a change in perspective. Questions about that? So it's shifting from a deficit negative, what's wrong with you, blame and shame kind of perspective, to this, what happened to you? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because what happened to you? What wasn't modeled for you? How can I help you succeed? And if you think about approaching someone, interacting with someone, if I'm coming, if I'm in an interpersonal relationship and I'm thinking, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing what you're doing? I'm much more likely to have a negative mindset, to have a negative tone of voice, to have a negative way of phrasing things, as opposed to I'm thinking, wow, I wonder why are they acting the way they're doing? Why are they behaving in this way? What didn't they know? What wasn't modeled for them? For example, like healthy conflict resolution skills, healthy interpersonal skills, even financial management, money management. There are lots of things that people don't get to learn growing up in their families and with their caregivers. And so how people act, they're trying to survive, right? And so what wasn't modeled for you? And then how can I help you succeed? And we know policing is all about helping the public be safe, right? Helping the society be a better society. And so policing is all about how can I help the public succeed? So a trauma-informed approach is perfectly in alignment with what a policing philosophy is. Maybe I'm wrong. Director Bont and Captain Brian, I forgot your last name, but can correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm thinking it just totally fits with the policing philosophy. So it's not blame and shame, but it's care and concern. What happened to you? Care and concern. And a trauma-informed approach is based on six principles. These are 6 principles that actually have come out of a drug and alcohol world through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, so Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And you can see they revolve around things like safety, which includes both physical and psychological safety, transparency, and trustworthiness, you'll often hear together, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, and then humility and responsiveness, which has also sometimes been discussed as gender, cultural, historical, and gender issues. When I was talking to my law enforcement colleagues, they suggested some of the most relevant ones that, from their perspective, might be the humility and responsiveness one, the cultural piece, understanding different cultures, different ways of being, and then the trustworthiness and transparency, which also correlates with listening and listening to the public, listening to their concerns, listening to what they care about, and then being very trustworthy, being very transparent in what you can and cannot do, and following through with what you say you're going to do. So that trustworthiness part. Do any of these, do any of these resonate with you? Do any of these stand out to you as being particularly relevant to trauma-informed policing and the police, especially the Newcastle County Police, perhaps? Do any of these stand out as being ones that might be especially relevant?
I think I'm assuming I know some of your colleagues just from folks that have left our agency to go to work for your institution. But yeah, I think the ones they speak to are absolutely relevant, right? There's absolutely a time and a place to be a human being in the execution of our duties. So, you know, and again, whether it's internally or externally, one of the things that I talk about again is that you need more compassion in the program because this is a people business. I know once had a boss years ago say it was a customer service business, and I didn't quite agree with this as a people business. And we're here, everybody that works and wears a uniform at one point wrote a written document that said why they want to be a police officer. And if I went and pulled them all, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably 95 to 100% of them say they wanted to help people. And what better way to help people than to be a human being and help people in their time of need? Now, yes, there is a time where you have to be tough and strict and authoritative, but that's not every incident. And so, yeah, I think the humility and the responsiveness is huge. And, you know, and the transparency is important, even just coming out of my last assignment in community services with the behavioral health guys and girls. You know, there's certain things that unfortunately have to happen, right, to get you on that course to get you healthy. And sometimes it's unfortunate, but if you're clear and you set the boundaries and say the expectations, hey, this is what we're going to have to do. But if we can get through this, you're going to come out the other side and we're going to get you into programs and we're going to get you the treatment you need. So I like everything I'm hearing.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brian. Hey, Sean, you had your hand up, I saw.
Yes. Hi, Dr. Burkey.
Hey, Deshaun, how are you? We're co-authors together on a publication.
I really appreciate what Captain Faulkner said, and I like to see that the peer support and the humility in this, because I know that if I'm coming from a high stressful situation and I'm going into a situation that is kind of something that's not to the level that I just previously was engaged in, that my emotions are already going to be elevated. And so having that peer support and having that humility to be able to seek out peer support, I feel brings a human approach to policing. And so I just wanted to be, I just appreciate seeing that and kind of level setting to that human approach. And so I think that's one thing that I probably didn't have at the back of my mind at always. And so I think that's something I constantly remind myself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Would anyone else like to comment on any of these?
I think Dr. Jenna has her hand raised. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No problem. I couldn't see. So let me go back. Yep. There we go.
Oh, I'm a teacher, and I often think about policing, related in my profession. There's so much to do, with discipline, and I think I'm a little bit stuck on, the Captain Faulkner said there's a time and a place to be a human, and I think we can always be human. I think we can always approach, and I understand that we do have to have discipline, but that's where those boundaries come in. And so I think that we don't have to blame and shame, even when we're enforcing things that need to be enforced.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you so much. And that actually,
Jenna, I'm sorry to say, and just one other thing, and you're 100% right. And one of the things that I know that has been passed down from almost every supervisor I've had, and I shared it with all my troops, that you treat everybody with dignity and respect. And we're always human. You're absolutely right. And I didn't mean to say that we're never going to treat people as humans, but my point is you always treat them with dignity and respect, and you try to meet them where they can. Unfortunately, because of the nature of our business, there are times when that has to take a secondary step to taking care of the task at hand. That's all I meant.
No, that's actually a great example. It relates to one of the things one of my colleagues, who's the former Newcastle County policeman, told me when he, at one point in his career, he was assigned to the unit where you investigated sex crimes, physical sexual abuse against children, and treating people with dignity and respect was not always easy. And it had an impact hearing about, the things that children had experienced at the hands of others, also had an impact on him. And at some point he asked to be transferred out because it was taking a toll on him mentally, physically, psychologically. So, as my colleague said, treating people with dignity and respect, regardless of whether or not what your personal feelings are. And they've also reminded me at one point you are trying to perhaps, I don't know the right words, take them down. And then at one point they may be trying to kill you, but if if they get shot, then all of a sudden you've got to flip your script and try and save them. So it can be a very challenging occupation because there's just a lot that happens that you have to deal with and flip on a dime. Luckily, with the trauma informed approach, and in your training, you already do a lot of practical strategies, the mindfulness, the deep breaths, the kind of calming yourself down, which fits with the regulate piece of our brains. We've got to calm ourselves down before we can actually relate to people and connect with people, which is very important. And then they can reason. Then we can actually reason with people. So one of the things the trauma-informed approach does is it'll pull together things that you're already doing in training, things that you've just started, like in 2022, you started this wellness program for the officers. It'll pull together kind of all those disparate pieces into a cohesive whole to make sense so we can address the officers holistically, and then hopefully the officers themselves will be able to, will see the impact of that in their personal and professional lives. Because that also is a beauty of this, is people see how it applies to themselves both personally and professionally. So we do know you've talked a lot about, or you've mentioned incidents where trauma impacts officers because, you are people too. You have lives, you have pets, you have families. One of my colleagues who was former DOC talked about, maybe a correctional officer's dog died and he's grieving the loss of a pet, but he has to go to work and he has to shut that off and come, you have lives too, which you have to figure out how to manage and then come to work and be present at work because you need to be fully present at work. Trauma impacts our communities. And then the interactions between police and communities can also bring trauma, and we can experience trauma. So there's lots of ways to unpack how to address and how to bring in this trauma-informed perspective. There are benefits, and I know I'm getting close on time. Actually, I'm probably over time now, but there are benefits, and these are just a couple of the ones that I wanted to highlight. One of my colleagues talked a lot about coping and stress in the police, in being a police officer, and how there's such a high rate of suicide and such a high rate of alcoholism, and so on, because of the stress and the doing the wonderful work that you do. And one of the beauties of a trauma-informed approach is it can lead to better stress management skills, better coping skills, increased resilience. The mental wellness, mental health and programming that you've just started in 2022 is a piece of that. The beauty about trauma-informed perspective is it looks at you as a whole person, so it recognizes there's physical, mental, psychological, social, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, and so on. There's health on so many levels, so it addresses that. Like I said, we know the trauma-informed approach enhances relationships. It can enhance them with your peers, with colleagues, with your family, with the community. Compassion satisfaction, that feeling that you just can't do enough, it can help address that because, talking about that and also talking about the benefits that you get from doing your job, the satisfaction, the compassion satisfaction that you get. And then hopefully, ideally leading to better outcomes or processes for both you as officers and then with the public that you serve. So that is kind of in a nutshell, a little bit about the trauma-informed approach and how it relates to policing. Did anyone have any other questions, any additional questions? I'll stop sharing. One question I had for you was the mental wellness programming. Have you assessed its effectiveness to date? Do you have metrics on how many are using the mental wellness programming, the impact that it might have had on them?
We have some initial metrics because we did a whole bunch of things at once, and which you've talked about as well. But we even got them all, I'm gonna say they're Garmin devices that track respiratory rates, heart rates, things like that. I think it even tracks their sleep. I have yet to see, maybe the director's seen it just because of my position. I have not been privileged to that, but I don't know if I know we have started compiling things. Obviously, we know how many people are participating, how many people have devices, how many people are going to the yoga, to the breathing programs and all these different things. But unless the director has something different, I don't know if we've actually really gotten any kind of real results to date.
No, and we not. It is still, like you said, it's still in the infant stages, working through it, obtaining the equipment and things of that nature. So we look forward to, gathering all of that data and taking a look at it. I think one of the things that I would like to point out, and forgive me, I was driving on my way to my mother's house real quick. And but one of the things I would like to say that I certainly understand that I think that with Newcastle County Police Department, we recognize the effects of the cumulative stress that police officers have to deal with. And we have taken substantial steps over the past several years to address that issue, because we understand that the cumulative stress over a period of time is detrimental to the officer personally and to the individuals that officer may come into contact with. I used for an example as recently as last night, or yesterday, I think many of you probably have heard about the tragic accident that occurred on 273 Airport Road. And we had, I think, Brian, was about 4 officers that were actually first on scene, or one of the amongst the first on scene. And years ago, in that case there was a mother who lost her life, young mother who lost her life. A child lost their life. Another small child was seriously injured, and others had injuries as well. And years ago, when an officer went on a complaint like that, as soon as they cleared up, it was off to the next complaint. But one of the things that we've mandated now is that we have our critical incident stress management team come in and they intervene. We pull those officers out of service. We sit down with them. We have a conversation with them. They're giving information because this is traumatic, and it's traumatic. And I know just from a personal standpoint that there are some things that you deal with as a police officer, and Brian and I was talking about this earlier today, that there are some scenes and some cases that you handle that they stay with you. And for years and years, we were taught to be macho. We were taught, officers, you keep going, you're not going to ask for any help, and you would just self-medicate. You would do what you had to do, and that's where you got into that whole thing of the abusing alcohol, and some cases drugs, the not being faithful to your wife, and doing all of those negative things that have an impact. Or when you come to work, you're having that short fuse, and as soon as someone says something to you, next thing you know, you're involved in a physical confrontation when it never had to go that way. So I think that what you're saying is right on point. We have definitely, I can't sit there and say that we've had the trauma informed the training as you're talking about, but we've taken some steps to make sure that we are addressing these issues and some of the stressors that the officers are facing on a daily basis. I know the unit that your colleague spoke with you about, both Brian and I worked in that unit, and I could tell you it was a unit when we're talking about the child sexual and physical abuse cases. Those stayed with you. You know, your homicide cases, some of your homicide cases, they stayed with you. And so I think that we've done a great job with that. We're building onto that. And I think in terms of the wellness program and really trying to get officers to buy into it. Now, I'll be honest with you, we still have officers who are like, I'm okay. And so I'm fine. I don't need anything. But we continue to chip away at them, and we're trying to make it to the point that it's a part of our procedure. Actually, it is that, there's not a question as to whether or not you're going to talk to CISM. That's part of our procedures, because we understand that if we do not do this, then we're going to have officers say, I don't need any assistance, I'm fine. And then we find out later on that they are having problems, and it's going to show up either in their personal life or it's going to show up at work. And so, there are a lot of things that we're doing. And I think that, what you're saying, I know it's just a brief overview of what you're offering, but I think a lot of this touches on some of the things that we're doing, and certainly we can look at maybe having a more in-depth conversation to see how it can be used more so with our police department. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. I see, Jenna, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to quickly say thank you, Director Bond, for sharing that and being vulnerable about that information. I love that you brought in the information about the huge emphasis that has been put on police officers to be tough and harsh and to brush things off and to not be self-reflective. So it's wonderful to hear what's being done to take care of the officers. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. We do have some more things on the agenda, but I don't want to rush through. If there's any other questions that you'd like to ask, please come off mute or raise your hand.
Chairman Eppenheimer, if I may.
Yeah, please. Thanks,
right. Doctor, thank you so much for the presentation. I will be updating the committee here in a little bit on the research committee. And I just wanted to thank you and say that we will be most likely reaching out if you're willing to continue conversations, and also with the colleagues that you said that you're working with. I think as we move forward as a research committee, we want to talk with a very diverse group of people, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But if you are jumping off or anything like that, I wanted to make sure to say thank you and extend that invitation to you.
I appreciate that. Yes, thank you. And trust me, they would be more than willing to keep the conversation going too. They're like, email me when you're done. Tell me how it went.
That's awesome.
Dr. Berkey, this is Pamela. I as well, again, wanted to thank you so much for providing us with today's presentation and taking the time to speak with us. We're greatly appreciative. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Pam.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you very, very much for your time. It was wonderful. And thank you, Pam, for this connection and for your amazing introduction of Dr. Berkey. That was perfect and well set up. You are most welcome to stick around for the rest of our meeting. This is an open public meeting. It's also being recorded, so you're welcome to come back and revisit it. So it is up to you how you'd like to spend the rest of your evening. But again, on behalf of all of us on our board, thank you so very much for your time. And I hope that we can use you as a resource moving forward, because this is a perfect resource for us. And so I echo what Dr. Tanya Whittle said, that I think this will be a good thing to tap into.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Actually, I'm going to hop off and go have dinner.
Wonderful. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right. So that was great. And again, Pam, thank you for that. That was really a great start to the meeting. Very quickly, next thing on our agenda is to approve minutes from our previous meetings. Let me look in. I think we have just last month's, if I'm not mistaken, and they were sent out to everybody. So this would be approving minutes from our July meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Wonderful. Is there any discussion?
Real quick, I think I didn't see, sorry, I didn't see Norwood on the minutes, but I was pretty sure he was at the meeting.
For July? He was, so he should be on the minutes. I'm sorry, Tanya, I don't have them pulled up in front of me, but I will double check. Kevin, do I have to double check that now, and we have to make a motion to amend?
Yes, yes, I'm a Zoom person too. Sorry about that. I keep forgetting about this mute button. Yeah, you have to amend it with the exact thing that needs to be amended to it. his name being added to the role is a simple amendment. But yeah, it has to be verified first that it's not there. And then if it's not, then you can make the motion to amend it. You can amend it in the next meeting if you want to, though.
I have it pulled up. It is not there.
I trust you.
I see it as well. Tanya's correct.
Add
Yeah, I
him
don't
to
see his name
present.
listed. Yeah.
So I
Okay.
moved to adopt the minutes as modified by adding the missing name.
Perfect. Any discussion on the move with the modification to approve the minutes? All right, hearing none, then it is passed. And thank you, Kaylin, for taking care of that. Thank you, Kevin, for keeping us on track. And thank you, Tanya, for catching that error. Perfect. And next was then going back to a conversation regarding the Citizens Police Academy. And so that's one of the reasons we wanted to gather, is to really talk about how we can handle the training that the board is expected to complete. So if I'm not mistaken, I will be turning it over to Director Bond to discuss. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I know the last time we talked about the Citizens Police Academy, some folks had some concerns about timing and the format with it being in person. And so Director Bond has a few updates about how flexible we can be with the Citizens Police Academy.
Yeah, well, good afternoon. I don't have a lot of updates on it. We haven't, but one of the things we were talking about, I guess, was the training and how to possibly incorporate the Citizens Police Academy into the board during the training. And one of the things that Caitlin was talking about was, I guess the board was saying that they would prefer to have it done virtually. And speaking with the chief and speaking with Captain Faulkner and myself, I think that the best way to convey the information is by being in person. However, if that's not an option, then we can certainly look at doing it doing it via Zoom or Team. But we have to keep in mind that there's certain of the training that have to be and should be conducted in person. If we're going to start talking about hold on one second. If we're going to be getting into talking patrol procedures, for instance, part of the Citizen Police Academy is that we have those participants actually are out there conducting vehicle stops, in a role play situation, and obviously that's not something that we could do, over in virtual. So it was also some discussion. I know that with the Citizens Police Academy, there are some parts of it that I don't know if we need to spend, because we're talking about, I'm not sure how many hours we want to do, but if we're going to have a limited amount of time, trying to keep it structured or keep it contained to those areas that we think are going to be the areas where we're going to do a lot of discussion around. And a lot of that will, in my opinion, will probably fall in the realm of professional standards unit, internal investigations, the use of force, and patrol procedures. We certainly can incorporate as I talked about, the crisis management group that they deal with a lot with when we have those rather involved incidents, whether it be barricaded subjects, how we deal and handle individuals that may be having a mental crisis that are now barricaded in the house. I know that a lot of times people have questions about that. Some of the other aspects of it, and we can also talk about some of the training, but there's some other aspects of the Citizens Police Academy that, given the time constraints, we might not be able to get to, but we can certainly touch on. And that's more so like the community policing. If you want to know more about the different programs, we can certainly go through that. But I don't know if that part of this curriculum is going to be as necessary as some of the other areas that I just mentioned. But again, that would be up to the board, to decide on how you all want to address the training.
Perfect. Thank you. Deshawn, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. My concern really isn't whether we do it virtual or if it's in person. I know what was floated before is that it was something that we needed to do all together. I'm not sure if that's still something that we're moving forward with, but that's where my barriers would come in because I have a sporadic schedule and I would need to be able to, be flexible in that area. So is that something that we're still moving forward with, or is this something that we can do individually? What's the expectation with that?
No, I think because we're also dealing with the time constraints of the instructors. And so we don't have the availability of the instructors to do 3-4 different times or days during the course of a week. I think that if we're going to do it, it has to be as a group, as a whole, just out of respect for their time. So we won't be able to break it off and have like 2 or 3 different sessions offering that same for that instructor to teach on the same course.
Gotcha. And you're speaking about strictly the Citizens Academy, right? I'm really talking about the entire training itself. If we are to do the citizens training all together, I can be flexible with that, but I'm talking about the total hours that we're required to do for the board.
And I think that might be a Mike question. I don't know if you'd be able to answer that. Does the board have to do all of our training as a group, or can it be broken out and done in different time periods with different people, like different trainings or the same training on different days?
The board would have to make that determination with the advice of law, executive office, and public safety. I would say that it would be better to have the board have the similar training, but there is nothing in the record that says the board has to be exactly the same training at the exact same time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I just want to add that to Mike's point, it depends on the type of training and the timing of it. So let's say if we contract a trainer and they're only available, or we schedule a 1-day training, which usually comes with a fee. We may not be able to afford like an additional day of training. So it would be helpful for trainings like that if you all can do it all together. But no, I'm sure, Deshawn, there may be some trainings where, the trainer is more flexible. Sorry.
I want to just bring up the chat. I'm going to ask one quick question on them, and I'm going to bring up both Krista's and Jenna's question. Is there a possibility too that if any of us did our own training or found something that counted and it was agreed upon, could they bring that information to share with the board so that the information is then kind of shared? So that doesn't have to be answered. It's just as we think through possibilities, I'll just see if that makes sense. But I want to turn to the chat. Krista asked, how long is the training that is being proposed for the Citizens Academy?
Well, the Citizens Academy is each subject. If we keep consistent with the citizens, our Citizens Police Academy, each subject is taught for about 3 hours, from 6 at night till 9 at night. There's some that are there's some days when it looks like, I'm looking at the schedule right now. Yeah, most of these days they're all from like 6 at night till 9. So you'll get 3 hours of instruction on professional standards, and I think that that's enough to be able to give a great overview and allow for a Q&A as well. Certainly, if there's a need for us to go beyond that, then we could hold on, my phone might charge. Might go out. So it is between usually about 3 hours.
And that's per session, or the entire thing is 3 hours?
No, per session.
And how many sessions are there?
What is that?
How many sessions are there?
Well, we have 8 weeks of training, but like I said, this in this setting and with this group, I don't know if we want to spend and it's up to the board, but do we need to spend a lot of time talking about the history of Newcastle County Police Department, because that's part of it. Or some of these other areas, I think that we can simply maybe even touch base on. It's not necessarily training, but it's information. You know, in my opinion, because you have really 20 hours is not a lot of time for training. I think
Right.
that focus should be on those high level areas that we can find ourselves having in-depth conversation about. And again, it goes back to the main things that people have questions about: your hiring process, how internal affairs, professional standards units conducts investigation and administers discipline, use of force, and then your patrol procedures, which involves, how officers are conducting vehicle stops, how they're interacting, how they're doing pedestrian stops. I think that those are the high level areas that we should focus on, so that this way, if there's an incident that happens in Newcastle County, and such as we had a few weeks ago, I think that the board will have a better understanding if they're looking at the body worn camera footage and saying, okay, well, this officer did, act in a way that they're trained, or they may look at it and say, based on our training, this officer did not, and we have questions about that, and so that's where I am with it. But again, like I said, it's up to the board to say what kind of training they want.
Brian, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to add, the Citizens Police Academy was really just used more as a framework. Based on the needs of the board, we will tailor whatever kind of curriculum and time frame we need to do to fit the needs of the training. I think the intent when the legislators put this together was, that 20 hours was to get with the departments, was to get a law enforcement or county police 101, for a lack of a better term, right? So the members of the board have a good understanding of how and why we do things. So we can absolutely modify, don't get taken aback by, oh my God, it's 8 weeks of 3 hours, because to the director's point, there are some things in there that are just probably not appropriate. Not that they're inappropriate for you all, but it's things your times would be better served. You don't need an hour in our communications center. Right. We can give you a tour of the building in 5 minutes, say, hey, people calling a 911, this is how it's triaged, give you the lowdown and move on. And for the CPA, that's a presentation, that's a tour, it's a this, that, and the other thing. So we can very much make, as he said, the topics that are important to the group into whatever time frame. Some things will take more than others, right? Use of force unit is something that I think you guys would all benefit from. They get into, the fact of the body worn camera and how frame rates and how it affects distance and angles and all these things. But so that could be a longer thing, but a lot of stuff could be tailored just to whatever kind of things that are pertinent to the group that he already covered. So don't let that 24 hours scare you.
Tanya?
24 hours in a classroom or learning setting, I can't wait. And I mean that genuinely as a nerd. 3 hours in an evening, I'm sure will fly once we actually get into learning it and talking about these things. But what I'm hearing, and I'm just synthesizing, and for the group, if anyone understands it differently, please correct me. But I like what I'm hearing as far as that, the Citizens Academy being the framework, focusing on those high pressure points. I think Director Bond might have used that terminology. As far as the history and the stuff that really doesn't need to be in person, if there's any written materials or notes that the instructors typically would use, and you can share that with us. I think that's just reviewing that material before we start the trainings will be good, preparation. And that way, when we are with you guys and in person, we can really focus on those issues that you identified. I'm sure there's a couple others that are important to the group, but what I think we also as a group should remember is that this isn't a one and done thing, right? Yes, we have to have this minimum amount, and we do want to get that under our belt fairly quickly so that we can be informed. But especially, I think the research committee and others as well, we will be continuing to ask for additional training. And if we find that, hey, we spent a lot of time on this and we wish we had more time to talk about that, well, we can make that time. And I think that goes both directions, right? Like if you're like, hey, we don't think you got what we're saying, I think that it would be good for even from y'all's perspective to say like, hey, maybe we should spend a little more time on this. Like we need to actually back up before we can move forward. And that way it's not just a startup education and training, but I think we need to have continued education and training just like you all do. Off my soapbox.
I was wondering if I could put our education committee on the spot for a second and see if Krista or Pam have any thoughts on things that you've talked about, ways to help navigate putting some of our training into practice. Does this help kind of think about what you've been thinking? And if you don't have anything to share, that is fine, but I want to make sure I give you the opportunity if you do have something you want to share on this.
I think what Director Bond just said kind of meets some of what we've discussed in that. I'm sorry, there's a toddler talking. If you guys can hear him. In that, like, those 3 hours of training, when we have to be on site and it's valuable for us to be on site, sure. But if it is something that is just classroom instruction, can that happen via Zoom as opposed to us driving and trying to get to one another for 3 hours? So like, could there be a combination? Can things be modified to really meet the needs of the board?
Yeah, I would think absolutely. Hi. I would think absolutely we can certain things, as the director alluded to earlier, certain things, yes. In an ideal world, Krista, you're 100% right. It's organic in the classroom. It goes in conversations at breaks, things develop. But yes, I think there's plenty of topics that we can do in a hybrid fashion. We live in that world now, so it shouldn't be a problem. But as you alluded to, there are going to be certain dates that we would have to say. And I think we could be flexible enough with the group's time and the instructor's time to, we're a 24/7, 365 operation. So we can fit it in whenever we need. So, but yeah, unless the director feels strongly otherwise, I think that's a concession absolutely could be made.
Yeah, I think we have already talked about it. We said that we will make it work, but we just have to understand that I think we'll all agree if you want to, that we're going to do the instruction on pedestrian stops and vehicle stops and putting you in a situation. I think it'd be best if you're in the actual police car, calling out the car stop and actually going through the steps of a police officer, making a stop and having that interaction with the occupants of a vehicle. I think that we can't do that virtually. So we would have to do that. And we would have, I think, enough advance notice so that people will be able to clear their schedules. And I think actually it's probably in the Citizen Police Academy, they always say that's the best part of the entire training. So
absolute fan favorite.
Together. So
that's great. Yeah. Jen, I see that your hand is raised.
Yeah, so I was looking at the document that Kaylin sent us, the framework. So I guess I was thinking in my head that this was starting on September 22nd, and I panicked until I saw the year was 2 years ago. And so I was just curious when, I know that you said you're willing to tweak it for us, but like, are they kind of scheduled, I don't know, in chunks? How does it work?
No, I think depending on the direction given by you all, we would start, kind of with some of the basic stuff, right? We're not going to jump right into patrol procedures. We'll get into policy, procedure, investigations, use of force. But once we kind of have that worked out, whether that's just the training committee as a group kind of dictates the curriculum, it's going to take a couple of weeks just to make sure everybody's schedules are going to work. So I would anticipate it's probably at least 30 days, probably 60 days before we jump into starting this with any kind of regularity. It could be accelerated, it could be decelerated, but yeah, we're pretty flexible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does it have to be like in the same a specific cadence, or could we do a couple of the low-hanging fruit early as we're coordinating some of the other in-person ones a little bit later? Can we skip a week if we needed to, or how quickly do they need to be back to back?
Yeah, I don't think there's any cadence that has to exist. So we can definitely, if we're gonna do some classroom stuff on, say, patrol procedures and use of force, we'd obviously want to follow up quickly with the practical, so it's fresh in your minds. Nobody's going to expect you to remember the procedures 2 weeks later, like we would with the officers. But as for Kim, to your point, yeah, the how professional standards does an internal investigation could be, whenever. That's absolutely no problem. Yeah.
I'd like to make a suggestion if Krista and Pam and their crew are okay with this, to perhaps they help start coordinating a proposed schedule. And then Kaylin can work with the board on what makes sense time-wise. For example, in the meeting, in the chat, there was the idea, excuse me, we could potentially consider every other Tuesday. That might be too much for some board members, but maybe there is a Tuesday a month, but perhaps the training committee, the education committee could focus on helping to create what this would look like. And they could work directly with you two in that to say, okay, here's what we've come up with. And if possible, it's something that we could then bring to the board and we could chew on it and then approve it at one of the upcoming meetings so we can start implementing it. Does that sound possible? I don't know, Pam, Krista, if you feel overwhelmed by that.
I think the problem is exactly what Kaylin just put in the chat about like other people joining. No, thank you. Because we want to make sure that what we are intending to plan and map things out makes sense for people. Like even when we sat down for our first conversation, it was like, we need to send out a Google form or a doodle poll to figure out when people are available in the first place. Like anything we do is a moot point without other input.
Absolutely. I'm echoing Krista's sentiments that we want to kind of gather, I guess, collectively what your thoughts are, what your schedules are, lack of availability, what days don't work, etc. As reference, low-hanging fruit versus, the meat and potatoes. What would you prefer? Maybe do it Tuesday through a Thursday, just whatever. But so Krista and I, we've been kind of chatting about that. So thank you, Krista, for sharing in my sentiments. I'm kind of right there with you, and we welcome your feedback. So Krista, I guess our next task will be creating sort of a survey form for folks to fill out, giving us your availability or a lack of availability, and then we can share that at the next meeting and move on from there.
Yeah, I have a survey that I created. So according to Mike, our wonderful lawyer, we can solicit information about you all's availability via survey, but we cannot solicit information about the types of training that you all want or need. So maybe we can talk about which specific modules from the Citizens Police Academy you all really want to do, like use of force, like investigation. So that way, when we send out the availability survey, it'll, go even quickly for us to, get things scheduled. So is it possible, maybe, I don't know if it's Kim, what are your thoughts? Maybe we can start having that conversation here so that we don't have to wait until the next meeting to start scheduling at least one or two modules.
I think that would be fine. If we can talk about how to get that list now in front of us, so we can discuss it. One of the thoughts is without having the availability, is putting forth the how many are in person, how many are virtual, because for some of us that's going to affect our availability. I can be virtual here but not in person. And so if it's knowing how many are in person, how many are virtual. So there's some of that tug and pull. And I don't know if that needs to be done here or if that's something that can be done at the committee level with the director and the captain to say, we really want these in person. And then, Krista and Pam and their committee can say, we need to have these virtual for sake of sanity or time. So there are a couple of pieces that can happen, hopefully outside, but if we can say which of the list we really want to do, I think that would be an appropriate way to handle it. So here we have.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah, please.
If we can identify when people are available for face-to-face and when people are available for virtual, we can look at this and work with Faulkner or Bond to figure out, okay, we know we can hold a virtual in 3 weeks, hypothetically. All right, so what can we cover initially in that virtual meeting? Then, okay, we know we have a face-to-face that we can have in 5 weeks. what can we cover in that, like to pace it out. Like as long as I don't know when people are available for that virtual or face-to-face, it's still going to be hard. It's still going to be hard to map out. Like we just need a general understanding of when people are available.
Sounds good. And we'll make sure that that survey gets out ASAP.
Just to add to it, as far as what has to be in person, I think we could probably, I'm just trying to find my paper copy of the list. Obviously, patrol procedures, car stops, right? That's a given. The only other one that I'm thinking off the top of my head, and it's been a while since I edited that document, would be the use of force guys, because they do a lot of videos to show you scenarios and how officers react and things of that. So I think my concern with that class would be is if you're in Zoom land, you're going to have lag and you're not going to see the same kind of quality video that they're going to show you in a screen. And honestly, that's probably, if push comes to shove, the only 2 or 3 things that we would have to meet for and go from there. The director had some technology issues. He'll be back on in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful, Captain Faulkner. I think Jenna recommended maybe we at least decide on the first round of training, given the information that Captain Faulkner just shared in regards to what can be in person and virtual. Maybe we can decide at least on one module, because we are really we're gonna lose time if we wait until next meeting to talk about which module you guys want to do.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And if I may,
are we doing anything?
Good.
Are we doing anything with what Berkey just presented to us?
That's up to y'all. You all can vote on it if you like. But yeah, I mean, the Citizens Police Academy is there. If you all want to maybe go through the CPA or go through those modules and see what gaps, you may want to fill, or what other questions you may have, maybe that's one approach. But it is up to y'all if y'all want to hire Dr. Berkey.
I think it's possible that there's a recommendation that we may want to see what she offers for the police as well. To like going through some of their training is going to help us know what gaps they have, and then also help us see where we might need it. But I think it also is something like an asset like her might be really good for us to say. And our recommendations are they should use her as a resource as part of this training or part of their training specifically.
Absolutely agree with you, Kim. And I think, you're going to find as you go through our training that while we touch on, as she alluded to, we touch on a lot of things, but we don't have anything that brings it all together, to my knowledge. Again, I've not worked in the professional development unit, but I know when Pam and I started talking a couple weeks back, or a couple months back now, I guess, about this when she inquired, I know, like I said, it touches as the doctor explained, but it's not there. So that would be a fantastic recommendation. And just to answer the one quick question, somebody said, starting on the first one, if I may just throw it out there, and again, you guys figure it out, but one of the first things that we kind of would envision for this would be, introduction to our hiring processes, because obviously we try our best to find the best people for this job. And maybe there's things we need to do better or do differently, right? That you guys could bring a different thing. And then law enforcement ethics and accountability. So not only once we have the right people, we have a session on law enforcement ethics and accountability, because it's very eye-opening, right? I know I don't want it to be cliche, but nobody hates a dirty cop more than a good, honest cop. And that's really the truth, right? When we see these things nationwide that, and it's somebody that's committed a crime, it affects us locally, it affects us personally and professionally. So, we could do those 2 things and potentially one other little thing in a quick 1-hour blips and get 3 things, kind of that initial, okay, here's how they hire them. Here's what's expected of them. Here's how we form our policies, right? I don't know what the policy presentation timelines could be, but we could definitely put something together. So whether it's in this group form and coming through together as what we want and what priority, or if it's myself and the director sitting down with the training chairs to kind of put something together and push out an overall calendar, and then we'll fit the dates and availability into it later. That's a possibility as well.
I like that. Yeah. Tanya, I see your hand is raised.
I think that's a really good idea as far as the starting point. That way we know the baseline, and it would give us an opportunity, I think, it sounds like that first one could be a virtual education. And then we can move into the more in-person hands-on sort of things. In the chat, I did put some suggestions of some potential dates. I know in the chat, some people agreed that Tuesdays were good. And so I was looking at the Tuesdays that there aren't, at least that I'm aware of, directly related to this conflicts. But I would ask the education committee as well as the chair to consider those just to get us started. I know doing a doodle poll and all of that will be really good to be as inclusive as possible. But I also know that that can bog down the planning process.
Tanya, you and I must be on the same schedule.
That's awesome. I won't be able to commit to any in-person meetings at this point. I will have to do triple calendar checks. Unfortunately, I do think we need to take it to a virtual poll or survey, but I do totally agree it needs to happen as soon as possible so that we can get the in-person ones scheduled. But I think getting a couple of virtual ones as soon as possible makes a lot of sense. So if there is a way to get that done, I know you had said it might take time, Captain, to get some of the other things in place in terms of like the people that you need, the educators, and getting that coordinated, as well as us. So perhaps we don't think about starting our first virtual until October, but perhaps people can really start thinking about committing some evenings, October and November, see if we can get this done before December, and see what we can do for both virtual and in person. And it may require that we really get to hang out together for the months of October and November and for several weeks in a row, whether it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. But it's important enough. We have committed to doing this when we signed on to be part of the board. And so I think if we can prioritize doing this, it's going to help us. It'll help us sort of understand where this is coming from, what this training is like, and then it'll give us more fodder on making some recommendations as we really need to get to that point of poking into that in the coming months so that we can really ask poignant questions. So that is my recommendation. Just to reiterate, it would be seeing if we can't get some sort of doodle or survey poll out to the board within the next 2 weeks. Ask that the board prioritize getting back to that as soon as possible. So maybe at the end of 2 weeks, we have some dates that work, and then having the captain or the director, whomever needs to coordinate, what are some options that we could be working with based on that. Now, I don't know if you need our schedules first or if we need your schedules first, because I don't know which one's going to be the tougher pool. But perhaps you can work with Kaylin and Pam and Krista to sort of think through which is needed. But either way, I think that has to happen.
I think for on our end, for instructors for virtual purposes, we can pull that together relatively quickly. By contract, I can adjust your schedule with 7 days notice. So we can make that work on our end very quickly. It's the in-person stuff is location, sites, equipment. You know what I mean? When we take you out and let you drive a police car and push the sirens and lights buttons and talk on the radio, right? We have to have a secure facility. We use the DMV down south for that. So that kind of stuff will take time. But this, what you're asking for us now, yeah, I think getting your guys' all availability is fine, and we will adjust to you. No problem. Okay.
Okay. Kaylin, I see that you put in the chat that you were saying if we'd get a motion to begin training with the hiring and accountability. Is that the hour-ish option?
Yeah, whatever Captain Faulkner suggested, maybe at least agreeing on those topics if you guys, like that plan. But again, I do think it'll be helpful if we had the topics decided on today so we can start as soon as possible with scheduling.
Yeah, I am fine with that. Is there someone who would like to make a motion that the first one we do is the summary of which the captain had shared, and if we need him to repeat it, we can put him on the spot and make him repeat it?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to start the training for the Police Accountability Board to begin with the history, hiring, and accountability portions of the Citizens Academy curriculum.
Beautiful.
And in addition, use of force. Did you mention use of force? I'm sorry.
No,
That'll
because
come
that
later.
would be in the second session or later.
This is our first official virtual one, would be sort of the good, setting us up, trying to get some of the things out of the way.
Baseline stuff, you know what I mean? In the sense of, again, we'll very little on the history, very quick, just because it kind of goes to why we do what we do. But you'll learn that later. And then, yes, the hiring ethics. And depending on the timing, I mean, what the instructors say, if we need to extend it a little bit, we can throw some policy stuff in there. But I think those two topics will probably take a good hour and a half, 2 hours easily.
What are the two? I missed it. What are the two topics again? Hiring and ethic. Hiring and what?
Yeah, so Sarah will be hiring, ethics, and accountability, and then potentially some policy, where the policies come from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tanya, are you still comfortable with that being your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Do we need to take a full vote, Kevin? Okay, so if you all wouldn't mind, for Kaylin's sake, for the minutes, if you could use the raise your hand feature or go in the chat, and if you're in favor, raise your hand, put in the chat, and I'm going to give it a minute, and then we will lower our hands, and I'll see if anyone is against. Okay, so go ahead and unclick raise hand if you've raised it to take your hand down, please. And if there's anyone that's against that, please go ahead and raise your hand now if you're against that idea.
I'm sorry, I have a random video somewhere playing on my computer. I couldn't hear what we were voting on.
Oh, you poor thing. No, that is totally fine. So we are voting on the first virtual session of the Citizens Accountability Training being on hiring ethics and accountability, and possibly a little bit of history on policy, should there be time.
I can't tell, Miss Pam, are you opposed?
Yes, I am. I think there should be an additional topic, so that's why I'm opposing it.
In the initial baseline one?
Correct, yes.
Okay, what would you like to add in that first one?
Use of force.
Well, the use of force will have to be done in person because they show videos and things like that. And so this isn't the end of the road for the CPA. We're just trying to get y'all's first session out the way. And Captain Faulkner recommended that hiring, ethics, and accountability will be a good kind of prerequisite to going through the use of force training. So are you still opposed, Miss Pam? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. But
okay,
that's fine.
got it.
It's fine. Yeah.
No, but is there a piece about the use of force you'd like to be introduced in this, or do you want to start with that as a core feature early on in the training, if you don't mind?
Yes. Your second comment.
Okay, so there's an urgency for us getting to the use of force.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
May I ask when in those 8 weeks it would normally be the cadence that you would recommend that? Do you know?
Yeah, usually it's week 6, but again, this is
okay.
Is a
Yeah,
fluid
it's all
document.
tailorable.
It's very it's based on instructor availability and stuff. And again, I completely understand Pam's point. So yeah, I mean, if we want to get this one scheduled and then very quickly come behind once we have dates for in person, those guys are in the office. We can definitely get them scheduled.
So perhaps it would be, and we don't all have to agree, but Pam, I want you to be comfortable. So that's why I'm going down this option to think through this. If we did this initial virtual one that might be less than 2 hours, then maybe the very next one is an in-person use of force training, either the next week if it's possible, or as soon as we are able to schedule it with the instructors. But perhaps we prioritize that as the second one. Would that help?
Yes, I would feel comfortable with that.
Okay. Just for sake of moving things along, let's go ahead and put that to vote. So now we have 2 trainings that will be scheduled, one virtual, one in person. The first one is the one we discussed, back to the hiring, the ethics, accountability, maybe some policy. And then immediately on its heels, likely a week later, would be in-person use of force. Do I have a motion for that?
Without sounding repetitive, I'm echoing what you just stated as
Please,
a
that would be
motion coming
great.
from myself. Thank you.
Anybody want to, Doug, are you motioning, voting, seconding? I see your hand raised.
No, I'm motioning. I agree with that.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Tanya, I see your hand raised. Is that a second?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to try to go back to the, if everybody could use their raise your hand feature, if you are for a virtual followed by a force, use of force as the immediate in person, please go ahead and raise your hand if you're for that, or put in the chat, yes.
Please keep your hand raised so I can get everyone, please. Let me see. Is this unanimous? Krista, are you a yes or no? Maybe. Okay, I see your hand.
Hand raised.
All right, it's unanimous.
It's unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you all. And thank you very much, Pam, for that. That was very helpful. And I think it's good for us to get a sense of the priorities that we feel we need. I appreciate that. Thank you. So we have 2 that are set. And I think we need to continue down the road once we get more availability from our board, what will be the next one. And if we can get any of that done before our next meeting, then in our next September meeting, we might be able to approve the rest of the training. So that'll be our goal. I am going to leave, if anyone has any follow-up, I'm giving you permission to come back to this, but I am going to move us to the next topic for sake of agenda so we can get through. There's another option for additional training. So this might feel overwhelming because we just went through this. So if no one has any pressing recommendations or motions or ideas, we can do this one of 2 ways. I would love to hear now what you're interested in and thoughts of how we can make sure we're utilizing our time. You can also send your recommendations to Kaylin, who can get them to, or directly to Krista and Pam, who have volunteered to help chair our trainings committee. Either is fine. So I'm just going to give it a minute to see if anybody wants to come off mute and share anything in terms of potential other trainings you want to discuss right now. Also, while you're thinking about that, we do want more members on the training/education committee. So if you're interested, it'd be great to have you join that. I see hands raised, so I'm going to see if they are because of the vote or because you want to share something. So Kevin, I see that you have your hand raised.
Oh, it's still raised from the last time. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay. No worries. I just want to be attentive.
So I have a question. And Tanya, I want to go off of you. So when we in our research committee, we talked about having some people or some input from some outside sources, but are we that was just for our individual group. We're at that point now, right? We're not talking about the whole board.
I'm not sure I'm following. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was asking Tanya, when we, at our research committee, when we talked about involving the other people, to come and speak with us, we haven't really gotten to the point to talk about whether they would come to the board yet, but that's kind of where we were going first, right?
Correct. So yeah, the research committee, yes, we did talk about bringing additional people to the table for discussion, and we got some clarification from Kaylin and Mike on that. But we'll decide within the research committee, just like how the education committee is doing, about who we want to then come to the full group. Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I just have a second? I just wanted to express my thanks to Krista for her due diligence, and it's just been great working with her. And I really appreciate her energy. So when I did the introduction earlier, I said there is no I in team. So I want to recant that statement and say we would like to present Dr. Berkey and the trauma informed approach principle. So I wanted to extend an apology to Krista, because Krista and I work together as a team. So thank you.
Well noted, and I'd like to formally put that correction into the written minutes if we're allowed to go back and change that. That was beautiful, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay, so hearing no other discussion regarding training at this time, going to move it on to any other business that needs to come to light. And again,
Kim,
it's best to come
Madam
off
Chair.
mute. Yes, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Pam.
I'm so sorry. Apologies. I just wanted to express that the outreach team did some phenomenal work. And I wanted to express my thanks to them for guiding me through Market Street Mall. Thank you, Caitlin and Sean and Doug. And that it was phenomenal. And it's just been an honor to be a part of that team as well. Thanks.
Yay. We like the acknowledgements part of the meeting. That's one of the best parts. Any other business that anyone would like to bring forward? Okay, hearing none. Next is the staff report. So Kaylin and Mike, if either of you have anything to share, please take this moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a quick poll of who still needs to set up their email account. If you could just raise your hand. Okay. All right, Miss Pam. Yeah, because Captain Faulkner sent you an email, Miss Pam, to your county account. Yeah. So you probably didn't get it. Captain Faulkner, you could go ahead and forward that to her personal email. That'll be great.
Will do. Apologize. I thought it was up and running.
And so,
Sorry.
okay. Thank you all for letting me know. I'll go ahead and resend that information. And yeah, if you can call our IT team, and if you're having any issues getting in touch with them, maybe we can set up a time for them to reach out to you. So yeah, just let me know if you're having trouble getting in touch with IT, but it should take only about 10-15 minutes to set up your email account.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I'll get it done this week.
Awesome. My second update is I know you all mentioned the desire for a social media page, and I just wanted to let you all know that the county did not have a board social media policy or something of that nature, so they asked Mike to draft one. So Mike is working on a social media policy for the county, and once that's approved, we can go ahead and start a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you all want. I think I see a hand raised. I'm not sure, Krista, if you have a question.
No, I'm sorry. I was just telling you my email is not set up. I apologize.
Got it. Okay. So yeah. Oh, my last update is I will be going to the County Council Executive Committee meeting next Tuesday, the 27th at 2 p.m. to provide an update on the board. Now, there will be an ordinance heard or introduced in County Council later on that day, which would provide $40,000 to the board for training. So we really we do need that money because some of your training sessions through the Citizens Police Academy will be paid. I guess this is a good, time to say this is so any other trainings that you all do outside of the county, those will not be paid because they're not considered a special meeting. But Mike, jump in here because this is Mike's language. But Mike shared that if we ask you all to do trainings with the county, then that's considered a special meeting. So we have to compensate you all for that. So your training sessions with the Citizens Police Academy will be paid according to your usual pay schedule, which is $100 per session. Anything outside of trainings with the county, like the police and things like that, those are not paid. Sorry, just had to throw that out there. But yeah, we'll hopefully, we'll get granted $40,000, and we can do even more trainings. Like I know I sent you all the NACOL training schedule. It's very expensive. So I encourage you all to take a look at it and see if there's any sessions that you want us to look into. I can also invite the head of NACOL to join our meetings like Dr. Berkey did, and she can talk more about all of the training sessions that they offer. But this is just a limited list of the sessions they offer. So yeah, with all that being said, please join me either virtually or in person next Tuesday at 2 p.m. just to show support for the board. I'll be telling everyone how awesome y'all are and the good work that y'all have been doing. And I'd like to be able to share at least the plans that you all discussed here for training. Since we're asking for 40K, I think the least I could do is mention our current plans on how we're going to spend that. So thank you.
Okay.
Kevin, I was not that boring. I was not that long.
No. It's been a long day. Sorry. It's been a long day. I've been up since 5 a.m.
That is great. That is great. Caitlin, there's an ask in the chat. If you could share the virtual link for the council meeting with the board, that would be amazing. Our lovely lawyer, Mike, do you have anything that you would like to add for us?
Not okay, so yeah, the social media again. Once Kaylin got the flying share out, essentially once they've approved my writing of the social media for the county, then I'll write a quick one, which is much smaller for us, and then you all can start with social media, and then with the special meetings. Essentially, the ordinance doesn't actually have made language for payment for training. However, if you're gathering together for citizens accountability, for a citizens accountability board type event, that's through the county, and therefore that was able to be seen at a special meeting. That's why that type of training is able to be paid for.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you both so much for the work that you were doing. You make our jobs easier, and we're really grateful.
It's the first time I've ever heard a lawyer made everyone else's job easier. So I'm going to take that and run with it.
Well, I think then we're going to have to say it more often. Thank you both. So moving on, the next is reports of our committees. And I know that Tanya had already said that they have some to share. So can I turn it over to you, please, Dr. Whittle?
Yes. So I don't have any results of or findings to share with you all, but did want to update the members that the research committee is now a strong force of 5. So it is me, Deshawn, Jenna, Norwood, and Sean have all agreed to be the formal members of the committee, but we will be engaging other people as we move forward. We were able to get clarification from Kaylin and Mike on the level of involvement that our non-voting members are allowed to play in those research committee meetings, as well as inviting outside subject matter experts. And so in addition to the monthly meetings with the entire group, we've also set a recurring meeting schedule so that we are, instead of the 3rd week with y'all, meeting on the 1st week, I think is what we've agreed to. And that way we will have regular touching base opportunities. And we're in the process of trying to establish what virtual space we will be sharing documentation and storing data. And once that is underway, we plan on doing some asynchronous collaborations as well. But just to give the Director Bond and Captain Faulkner heads up, I will be reaching out because we do want to set up opportunities to touch base with you all. And I know I got to tell Captain Faulkner that on Tuesday night, but it was so busy I didn't have a chance to speak to the director. Any questions for the board or for the research committee?
Yeah, this is Kevin. This is Kevin. Just a logistics question. Kaylin, Michael, from a document storage standpoint, even if it's committee specific, does it need to be stored on Newcastle County servers?
Yes, I was about to chime in and ask about
Okay.
State that it would still be considered public documentation at that point.
Okay.
So does that mean it has to be on Microsoft Teams, Mike, like our cloud storage space that we use, since the county uses Microsoft? Or I'm sorry, what is it? OneDrive.
Right.
Yeah.
So we go ahead, Mike. I don't want to cut you off. Good.
No, you please. You probably have more information about storing things than I do here.
So once everybody is into the county domain through your email, and I can verify this when we get in tomorrow, you should all have access to the cloud-based storage, which is OneDrive. You can access it. If you're not familiar with it, it's like a Google Drive. So you should all have that. And yeah, that at least from my experience, that would be the spot for that. If we ever get a records retention request for something down the road, it's there and it's not on any of your personal devices, because that is a problem. Yeah.
We want to protect you.
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to give that feedback. And so again, just work with let's we can get some direction on how we can store stuff in OneDrive, so that we can get it out to the committee so they can know how to access it, get to it, create folders, restrict access for stuff again that they want everyone to see that type of information. That'd be great.
Got it.
Wonderful. Any other questions for the research committee? Wonderful. See, Deshawn, are you still with us? I can't always see everyone. Do you have any updates on the community committee?
Yeah, the outreach committee. Yes.
Outreach. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So the last meeting that we had, I was not able to attend it. It was just a few days ago when we met in person to pass out some flyers. Prior to that, we met to discuss how we want to come together to kind of map out the different locations in Newcastle County for our future board meetings so that we're incorporating the full community. And so the next time that we meet, we'll have those kind of recommendations, and we look forward to presenting that to the board. But other than that, that's pretty much where we're at, and we are on a cadence so far, and so I'm looking forward to our next meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any questions for Deshawn? Okay, and then I know that we had talked a lot about our trainings, but I do want to give an opportunity to Pam or Krista if there's anything that you would like to share that wasn't previously shared about your actual committee, the meetings, soliciting from members.
I don't know if Krista has anything. It's just that, we're in the collaborative stages. And because of my experience and exposure with the trauma-informed approach module, I thought that it would be appropriate to sort of match, as Dr. Berkey alluded to, about trustworthiness and just those 6 principles: respectability, cultural competency, and trust and integrity. I just think that that module would be a perfect match for the necessity in order for us to grow and learn, and then matching that with the police academy training. If there are areas where there is a need for recommendations and changes, excuse me, then that particular I don't want to say product, but just exposure to that content gives you sort of another tool to be able to make those recommendations and being unbiased. Krista, you have anything to add?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. I want to refer back to the chat. Kaylin asked, what's the meeting cadence for the outreach committee? How often and when do you meet?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have access to the chat for some reason.
I don't either.
Okay. Yeah, so what we agreed during our last conversation is that we would like to meet kind of directly after our meetings to be able to kind of have that session for us to discuss what we heard. So we are really aligning on how to move forward. And so I don't think we have it on the schedule now, but I believe we agreed to do it after our next meeting, I believe on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday. Is that right, Pamela?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
And Caitlin, I can reach out to just give you those dates so that you're aware. But I'm sorry, I wasn't able to answer in the chat.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And then Kevin put in the chat, we need to develop a committee report template for all committees to file an official report. He will work on something. Thank you, Kevin. You're the best. And Kaylin mentioned there's 2 good relevant trainings, mental health first or youth mental training first aid, cultural humility, Sean Green. Wonderful. So those are from him. That's great. And then perhaps Newcastle County Police Department should give it updates as well. Maybe we can go more information on what that looks like.
Yeah, like what events do you all have coming up? Like, are there any initiatives that we should be aware about or any news?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely just coming out of community engagement, I would get a weekly. These are the public facing events that we're doing. These are the activities in schools, and we can definitely start sharing some of that stuff with the board. I know you'd reached out about the coffee with the cop that's coming up, and that's something we've done for as long as I can remember at the agency. National Night Out will be rescheduled, but that should be coming up here in a couple of weeks. It was supposed to be in August with the weather, but yeah, absolutely share that kind of stuff with you. No problem.
And some things can be written. So, for example, that is something that can be given ahead of time, could be part of the agenda, shared, so that people can take it with them perhaps, or it can be on a screen, and then make sure we're highlighting things that are important during it just for, and this is true for all of our committees, for organization and time. So if we are having a longer meeting, we can think of a way to make sure that we're getting the pertinent information to the board and being succinct as you guys are getting more and more involved with your committees. There'll be more and more to share. So I think, Kevin, having a template's a great idea. So thank you for that. Before we move to any potential public comment, I think we do have at least one guest with us. I wanted to share with the board that as we continue our public meetings, there will be some things that I'll be doing intentionally to ensure fair access to voice and helping to ensure that we are having healthy dialogue throughout. So I am committed to helping to ensure that people don't abuse the time and that they're respectful to me as chair or whoever is chair for that meeting. And so we're going to try to really make sure that that is happening. In addition, one of the challenges that we have is because we spend a lot of time listening, we don't always have time for dialogue. And so this was a wonderful meeting and a great opportunity for us to start having some dialogue. That's going to be difficult if we don't call a special meeting like this, and we don't have time to do a lot of special meetings. But we will have to do some, especially as we get close to the end of the year and we need to put in a report. But one thing that I'd like to institute in our meetings is an opportunity where I will call on each of you as board members to see if you have something you'd like to say or share. And this will probably be either after a presentation, perhaps if there's time after public comment or before public comment. And if you don't have anything, you simply can just say no or pass or whatever. But sometimes it helps to have that dedicated moment so that you know you can step in and speak. So that is something that we'll try to make sure is instituted moving forward. And I just wanted to share that with you all. So at this point, I'd like to open up to public comment, and that includes anything from the board that you all would like to share or add on after this, anything else you have to say. And please raise your hand in this portion so that if there is more than one, I can call on you. Okay, seeing none, I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting because that is the agenda. Is there a motion to end?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
All right, I'm going to formally end the meeting at 7:47 p.m. and I am grateful, you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody. Take care.
Great,
Good night.
great job, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Great job, Kim. All right. Bye, Pam. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you
You're
so
most
much,
welcome.
Pam.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
I hate to admit, but man, when the public's here, they they really do throw our meetings off. As much as I love them.
We got a lot done. This was productive.
We really did. We really did.
Caitlin, you're still recording, so you might want to kind of end at the adjournment. Make sure
Before I start talking about people. All right. Well, thank you all.
Record.
Yes, you can
So
get that
fun.
part off the record. Right?
Yes. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.